everyone, it's Bethany and I am working on creating a really cute t-shirt with 3 different colors of Infusible ink, and I thought I would show you how I am going to approach this if you wanted to do a Infusible ink shirt and use more than one color. So I'm going to be using 3 different colors. I'm going to be using the rose pink, the mint, and then the warm gray, and those are all the full-size Infusible ink sheets. And other things I'm going to be using are the Infusible ink t-shirt. I'm also going to use my Easy Press 2, and I grabbed my biggest one. And then I have a heat press mat, I have a piece of cardstock, a lint roller, and I think I might use some heat resistant tape, but I'm not quite sure yet, so I just brought it out just in case. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into Design Space and show you the file that I'm going to be using and show you how to change the colors on a single layer file to make it multiple layers, and then we will get to pressing the shirt.
Okay, so here we are in Cricut Design Space, and this is the design that I'm going to be using. I found this on designbundles.com, and I thought it was really cute, and I thought it'd be a great idea for our essential workers. So I'm going to be putting this on a shirt, but you could also put this on a tote bag or a little makeup bag. You could put it on pretty much anything. So I think it would be a really fun idea. You could also do this with iron-on too. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to size my image, and I am going to do a width of 10 inches for my shirt. So I'm just going to size that down to 10 inches, and that puts my height at about 7.6, so that sounds about right. Okay, so let me make this a little bit bigger, and then we are going to go ahead and get this all colored. So what we're going to do is we are going to come over here and we are going to ungroup everything. That way we can start coloring everything in the appropriate colors that we want. So the first thing I'm going to do is this big stethoscope, and I am right over here in the right hand side layer panel just grabbing pieces that I want. It can be easier than trying to grab them on the actual design. So the stethoscope, to start out, I'm going to make that gray, and I'm just going to do a couple big pieces here, and then I will go through and use Color Sync to get everything colored really quickly, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go grab the heart. I'm going to find the heart here, and the heart is going to be pink, so we'll do pink there. And then I'm going to grab one of the leaves, and I'm going to make that the mint color. I think that'll be really pretty. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, since I have one of each color present on my design, I can go over to Color Sync, and it can help me get everything colored really, really quickly. So I know that I want the flowers and the hearts to all be pink, so I'm just going to grab all of the hearts and the flowers, and I'm going to drag them to the appropriate color, and then you'll see on the actual design that it actually colors it in real time. So everything just goes a lot quicker than trying to find everything and then going up to the color box over here. So I like to use Color Sync just to quickly get things in the right color. Okay, so that looks good. The next one I'm going to do, let's see, we're going to make all the leaves green, so we'll do that. So I'm just grabbing all the leaves. Okay, and I'm also going to make the middles of the flowers, I'm going to make those green. Now this is going to be a little tricky because some of them you're not really sure which one is which. So we are going to just watch as we go and see which one it is. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm also going to make these gray. Perfect. And I think this is the biggest for the stethoscope here, so we'll make that gray. Okay, and let's see. So now what I'm going to do, again, I'm going to make the middles of the flowers green, and then I'm going to make the rest of these little dots, I'm going to make them gray. So I'm just going to go through and color code those accordingly. Okay, and the last piece is now color coded. So now I have it colored exactly how I want to use it with my Infusible ink. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back over to my layers, and now I need to go ahead and attach all of my common colors. So what that means is you're going to go through with all of your pinks first. So I'm going to go over my layers panel, it's a little bit easier. And I have Command on my Mac keyboard just selected, and I'm going to go through and find all of my pink pieces and just click them. Make sure I have all of them, and then I am going to double check I have everything, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, I can actually say weld. Okay, so now all of those pieces are welded together. So then the pink pieces, when they come off, they will actually print just like this. So I'm going to go ahead and click that back on. Okay, the next piece would be the green. So I'm going to go ahead and do the green. Again, I'm just clicking Command on my Mac keyboard and holding that down while I select all of my green pieces, and then I will weld them. Okay, so now all of the green pieces are attached as well together, or welded together. So now I'm actually going to pull these apart, because the easiest way to do all of these without having to get all of those tiny little circles is just select everything here, and then it's going to select it all in my layers panel. I'll come down here and I'll just select weld. Okay, so now everything will just be placed roughly back on there. It's a little tricky, but it is doable. Don't worry, we will get it all placed in there, just somewhat like this. Okay. Okay, so there's our final one. So now that they are all welded in their individual colors, they will print or cut, I believe, in this exact order. So now the last thing we are going to do is we are going to use our Explore machine. You can use any machine for this. You might have to get really creative though with the Cricut Joy, just with sizing, because this is a larger item. But if you're making something smaller, I would believe that it would work on the Cricut Joy. Okay, so I'm going to select Make It. And with Infusible Ink, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to mirror every layer. So I'm going to go through every layer. It's all now divided by color. And I'm going to make sure everything is mirrored. So mirror is turned on each one. And then I will go ahead and click Continue. It's going to locate my Explore Air 2, and then I'm going to go ahead and select Infusible Ink Transfer Sheet as my material. Default pressure is just fine, and I'm going to go ahead and start loading. So on the heat guide, what we're going to do is use the Easy Press 2. I'm going to select my Infusible Ink Transfer Sheet as my material. My base material is going to be a t-shirt, and I will select Apply. And it's going to show me the stacking order, which I find is so helpful, because I've done Infusible Ink quite a bit, but I still sometimes don't remember exactly how to lay it down or the order of doing things, so I use this every time. So 385 for 40 seconds with light pressure, warm peel, and then it's going to give us our prep and supplies and all of the application instructions. So I use this each and every time.
Okay, so I'm just opening up my gray, and that's the sheet that is going to be loaded first. And Design Space will just prompt you with which color to load next. So you'll just want to keep an eye on that on your computer so that the right layers cut on the right color. So when you're working with Infusible Ink, you actually have sheets with ink on them. So you want to make sure your hands are just dry and free from any type of oils, such as lotions and stuff like that. So you want to just make sure that you have nice, dry, and clean hands. And then you're going to grab a sheet, and the actual color of the transfer sheet is very different from what it's going to be in the end. So you'll see that the actual color is very different than the box, but it will actually take on the actual box color once it's pressed. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. We're also going to use a piece of the butcher paper that comes with it. So I'll set one of those aside. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this. It has two sides on it. One is the ink side, and then the other side has the grids on it. So I am going to go ahead and place the grid side down and the ink side up. And I'll just place that right on my mat. So I'm going to use my brayer tool just to get that really down on my mat, nice and flat. And it will be all set to go. So now what I'll do is I will go ahead and place this in my machine, and I'll just show you one cut, and I'll do the rest behind the scenes so you don't have to watch me do each and every layer. But I'm loading my mat, and then once this flashes, I will go ahead and select the Cricut button, and it will go ahead and start cutting. So with Infusible Ink, what I do is I just roll up all of my extras and place them back in this little black pouch, and then I place it back in the box. I also place the little decusant packet right back in there. It just removes all of the moisture because you want to keep this product dry, and I just stick everything else back in there and in the box for safekeeping. Okay, so that first one is already done, so I will go ahead and unload this, and then I will put my pink sheet on and move on to the mint, and then we'll get to weeding. For removing infusible ink from the mat, what I like to do is just turn it over and then peel a little bit away, place a firm palm on the infusible ink sheet, and then just peel the mat away from the ink, and that just really helps everything just stay intact.
Okay, now the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a little template so that I can help place my pieces together with all of the infusible ink colors. So this may not make too much sense right now, but just wait and you'll see why I'm going to do this in a second. I'm going to go ahead and select everything and weld it all together, and then I'm going to come up here. I'm going to change it from a cut file to a draw file, and then I'm going to say make it. The next thing I'm going to do is I am going to turn mirror on, and then I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, this is going to be 8 by 11, so that's a perfect size for printer paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click continue, and I'm going to just place a piece of printer paper on my mat and have that draw out on the paper.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to place just a regular piece of printer paper right on my mat here, and I went ahead and grabbed a light grip mat for this part because paper is a little bit more delicate and needs a lighter grip, and I'm going to go ahead and load it into my machine. Okay, and then I'm just going to take a 0.4 tip black marker, it doesn't matter what color you use, and I'm going to insert it into clamp A, and then shut the clamp and allow it to get drying. Okay, so while that is cutting, what I'm going to do is show you how to weed infusible ink if you haven't done it before. So the first thing you're going to do is you're actually not going to use any type of weeding tools like you traditionally would to weed iron-on and vinyl. You can use tweezers, they recommend that if you do need help, but I simply use my fingers and I find it works just great. So what you do first is you're just going to kind of roll it, and it's just kind of called snapping and crackling it and getting it all to kind of pop out of place. And then usually when I am pulling this up off of my green mat is when that kind of cracking and snapping occurs. So if you don't hear that too much, it might have already just occurred. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little corner of it and I'm going to just start peeling away the outside areas. Now you can keep these big pieces, so make sure if you'd like to reuse them, you can set them aside, because see, this piece right here is actually quite large. So you might want to just set this aside and use this for something else. You can do that. Okay, so I'm just going through, and it really is so easy to weed. You just take your fingers and pull, obviously being careful a little bit so that you don't rip anything that's not supposed to come up. So you do want to take your time, but it's super easy. And you can also reference your design in Design Space so that you know which pieces need to come up and which need to stay down. But it's really fairly simple. Okay. So the reason you don't want to use any type of weeding tool is because you can actually fairly easily scratch the infusible ink. I actually haven't done that before because I've only ever used my fingers, but you do want to make sure that if you have long nails or anything that you are being mindful of not scratching that. And I think there's one little piece that tried to come up there. So let me try to get that back down. And I think everything else stayed put. Okay, so all those are great. And I think this little middle part comes out. And let's see what else. This big piece. And again, this is another piece that you may want to set aside. And you'll just want to make sure that you store it like you would your regular rolls of infusible ink. Keep it in a nice dry place. You can even place it right back in the box that you have the rest of your infusible ink with. That way it stays nice and safe. So that is our first layer. This is going to be the stethoscope layer. So we have that all ready to go. So our next one, let's do the pink. And you might be able to see this a little bit easier. What we're going to do here is, again, you can just kind of roll it and see if you can get it to crack a little bit. And again, I usually find that if you have a really sticky green mat, which is the mat they recommend for infusible ink, when you're bringing it up off of the mat is usually when all of that cracking takes place. I have at least found that to be true. Okay, so I'm just going to take off everything that I don't want in my final design. Let me know if you've worked with infusible ink and if you've tried layering infusible ink. That's what we're going to be doing, obviously, in this tutorial. this is my first time layering Infusible Ink, and I've kind of gone back and forth with how I want to approach this. So because I have a lot of pieces to lay down, I'm going to show you something that I think is going to make sense for me. Okay. And just a couple little white pieces here that I'm going to get off. And then the middles of my little flowers, you can just bend the little Infusible Ink sheet and take those right off. So this is the second little layer we have here. Perfect. Oh, and one little piece right in this heart. Okay, that looks great. So our final little sheet as well is right here. And I'm going to double check that I can't crack that any more than it already is. I think it's already good. And I'll go ahead and weave this real quick and we'll be all set to go. Okay, so I'm just finishing up this last little piece and this is all good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of all of my scraps or keep the ones I want to keep and get my workspace all clean, and then we'll get ready to start layering all these pieces. Okay, so I have my design here that I had the pen feature draw out on my machine. And one thing I want to remind you is if you decide to do this little method, you want to make sure that when you go back into Design Space, you don't change the size because you want to make sure that this is going to be all the exact same sizes as all your pieces. So what I'm going to do is, unlike iron-on, if you were using iron-on, you could put all of these layers down separately. But with Infusible Ink, you can't do that. You have to do everything in one press. So what that means is you have 3 different layers here. We need to turn all 3 layers into one layer that will go down all at one time. So we want all of our colors to be going down all at one time. So what we're going to do is we are going to take these little pieces and we are going to place all of the pieces on one sheet. So how we're going to do that and how I think it's going to make the most sense for me is I went ahead and made this template. That way I could go ahead and place my first piece on and line that up where it goes. And what I'll do is I will just tape this in place. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to take the pieces off of these and I will put them in their coordinating spots. So I'll go ahead and zoom in so you guys can really see how I'm going to do this, and we will get everything placed on one sheet for one press. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to just take a little piece of tape or a couple pieces of tape. Again, I am lining up my biggest piece because the biggest piece is where you're going to place all of your pieces. So I'm going to make sure that that is lined up perfectly with my design. And this is, again, why you want to make sure that your design stays the same size. And I'm going to place a piece of tape right there. That way it doesn't move while I'm doing the rest of this. So I'm going to go ahead and line everything up just like this. And there we go. Okay, so now what I think I'll do is I think I'll do the pink pieces first. So I'm going to go ahead and take this little heart off. And then I'm going to line it up right here. Okay. And this just helps you know where all those pieces go, because sometimes when you're doing this with Infusible Ink and you're layering it, it's really obvious and you're using really big pieces. But the design that I chose has all really, really small pieces. So it's going to be kind of hard to do this without any type of visual help. So this, again, is just something that made sense in my mind to do. So you can skip this step if you're better at visually placing things, but I just thought it'd be nice to have a little puzzle piece, if you will, just to place all these pieces back on. So again, I'm just gently removing, just like I was doing while I was weaving, I'm just gently removing these pieces from the sheet that they're on and placing them on the final sheet over here. Okay, so then I have my little heart up here. Oh, this is working out so good. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I decided to do this halfway through this tutorial. I was thinking, as I was looking at all of these sheets being cut, I was thinking, how in the world am I going to do this and get it all lined up how I want it and perfect to maintain that heart shape? So this was kind of thinking on the fly. And I am really thankful that that was just kind of placed on my heart to do that, because this is working out beautifully. This is going to be a wonderful trick. Okay. So just grabbing another little flower, placing it right where it goes. Okay. And so now I'm going to start with my green. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my little vines here, just being very gentle that I don't. And if it's not already obvious, this piece of transfer tape that the Infusible ink is sticky. So that is why all of these little pieces are sticking right back where they need to go. So it makes it really, really easy. So I'll grab that piece, and then I will grab this little piece right here. And then I'll go ahead and place all the other little leaves. So you're going to want to make sure that you're also placing it with the ink side up, so that when you lay it down, all of the ink sides are on the same side. So you want to make sure the ink is faced up and then the back is faced on the sticky side. Okay, so I'm placing my last little piece right on my sheet, and I'm double checking that I don't have anything left on my sheet. This can just be tossed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little brayer tool and I'm just going to lightly roll over my Infusible ink here, just to make sure that everything is really pressed down in its spot before I take the next step. Okay, so now that everything is there, what I can do now is I can just take this little piece of tape off of each side, just like this. Okay, and now I am left with my design just as it should be. Do you see that? And it was with the help of a little template. So I honestly thought that was a really great idea. I hope you guys use that if you decide to do a design with a lot of little pieces, because playing a guessing game, even if you have it up on your Design Space screen for reference, it's really hard to do. So just take this step, make sure your design turns out as best as it can, and I thought that worked out really well. Okay, so now what I'm going to make sure this little tape comes off, because I am going to press it. So the tape I used for this part was not heat resistant, so you want to make sure that tape comes off and you toss that. And if you need any tape from this step forward, you'll need to use heat resistant tape, because now we're going to have a heat source involved in the project. Okay, so now it is time to start pressing. So what we're going to do is we are going to set our little design aside. And again, I'm referencing the heat guide from Cricut. That way I can get a little help with how to do the stacking, because sometimes it gets a little confusing, and there's always something to help you. So I'm going to go ahead and place my shirt right on my mat here. And then the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to place the cardstock. So I have this little piece of white cardstock. I'm going to place that inside my shirt. Let me get it where I'd like it. So I'm thinking right about there, and I can always move it if I need to. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to lint roll my shirt, and this is a really important step. So I'm going to get a fresh piece of tape here on my lint roll, and I am going to just roll that over, especially the area where my design is going to be. It may seem like a silly step, but it's actually super, super important. So make sure you take your time with this step and make sure there's nothing on your shirt. Okay, so now that it's been lint rolled, I'm going to go ahead and grab my butcher paper, place it right over my shirt, and then I'm going to grab my press and set it on there for about 15 seconds. So I'll let that count down to 15. This is just going to make sure that there's no moisture in the shirt and make sure it's all prepped and ready to go for the Infusible ink. Okay, so that's just about good. So I'll go ahead and place this right back over here, and I'll go ahead and remove this and let it cool. So I like to let mine cool, because if you were to go ahead and place your Infusible ink right on there, it would start transferring. And if you needed to move it for any reason, then you would have already put ink splotches on your shirt. So I like to really let it cool down, and then once it's cool to the touch, I will go ahead and place my sheet on there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab my design, and I'm going to center that the best I can. I'm just going to do it visually, but you can go ahead and grab a tape measure if you would like to do that even further. And I'm going to place that right about there. And I will grab my tape measure and just double check. And it looks like I have about 3 inches on this side and roughly about 3 inches on this side, so that's actually pretty good. My eye usually does a pretty good job doing so. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that down, And again, that Infusible Ink transfer sheet is sticky. This gridded sheet is sticky. So if you find that it's not sticking because you don't have enough of it with your design, you can always use the heat resistant tape. I'm not going to use the heat resistant tape because I have enough stick to mine where I think it's just fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and move this little cardstock up just a little bit because I want to make sure that I have it wherever my design is, because what that cardstock is doing is it's preventing it from going in on the back of the shirt. Okay, so that looks about right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pressing. So what I'm going to do is place my butcher paper right back on top, just like that, and everything, just double checking that's all down. Okay. Looks good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this doesn't move once it's on my shirt. So I'm going to pick it up and I am going to set it straight down, making sure it covers my entire design. Remember, you can only press Infusible Ink one time. And then I'm going to press start. Now it says light pressure. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on it. And I also made sure that it's not on any type of seam or collar because we want to make sure that it has a nice even press on the shirt so that the ink gets a nice even press. So I'm putting a little bit of pressure on it. It does say light pressure, but I'm just putting a little bit of pressure on it, a little additional pressure. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and lift it straight up. And I'm going to place it right on my base. And then I'm going to let this cool for just a moment, and then we will go ahead and lift it up. Okay, so this is the part that I always hold my breath on because I'm always so nervous. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a corner, and I'm going to slowly peel it up. And there is my final shirt. How cute! And you can see on the Infusible Ink sheet that all of the ink has officially transferred. There's nothing left, and everything is now on the shirt. So I'll go ahead and zoom in so you guys can really take a look, but it looks awesome. I'm really excited. This was a good press. Okay, so here's the final shirt. I love how it turned out. I will be honest, I'm seeing a little bit of blue fuzz on the side, and that is what I hear. It's never happened to me before, but now I can say it has happened to me. It means I did not quite do enough of a good job with the lint rolling, because if you don't get everything off, you can see that, and it's hard to see on camera, but I can see in person, there's a little bit of blue fuzz that can show up after the pressing of Infusible Ink. So I know that it seems silly to lint roll, and I always thought so too, but now I'm noticing, even though I thought that I did such a diligent job and I was being super careful, you just really have to do that part. So I definitely recommend going over it even more than you think. So I see a little bit, but it's not enough to ruin the shirt for me. It looks great. It's barely noticeable, but it is there. So just FYI, make sure you do that part. But I think it turned out really good. And unlike iron-on that sits on top of the shirt, Infusible Ink actually infuses into the shirt. So it is there, it is permanent, it's ready to go. You can stretch it, and then once you pull it back, it is right back in its correct position. Nothing is stretching or anything like that. It's all perfect. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed that little hack with the pen feature to get everything lined up, because that would have been a little difficult, I believe, without having a little bit of a guide to place the little puzzle pieces on. So if you enjoyed this, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you really enjoyed it, please be sure to share this video. I'd love that. Let everybody else know about this little trick in case everyone else is trying to do some Infusible Ink with more than one color. All right, everyone, make sure you guys are all ready to go and subscribed, because we are going to be doing a lot more fun things on the channel coming up soon, and I will see you all in the next video. Have a good day.